Reinvent your midlife season. Welcome to the Austin James Haynes podcast. This is being recorded on Thursday, October 31st. It's about 5:32 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today I find myself right smack dab on the edge of the Grand Parade in Valley Forge National Park. The sun is descending behind me. Perhaps you can hear the wind rustling the leaves, the zephyr moving through. I have these beautiful yellow leaves on my left that are just moving in the wind, and I got my bare feet on the ground. Grounding is a great thing to do all year if you can, but today is a great opportunity. It's almost 80 degrees, or in the 80s, I should say, today. It's another Indian summer day, and I just invite you to pause and breathe with me here as we delve into this midlife perspective. This is a part 2 of yesterday's episode. I'll get into that. But for a moment, just take a moment to pause and breathe. Give yourself the gift of this moment. Breathe in through your nose. Pause. Breathe out through your mouth. Welcome in the open space here, whether it's short or you're able to expand that pause and breathe, not only in the physical body, but in your life. Let that pause and breathe lead to a spaciousness that you haven't felt, an openness that you haven't felt. So we can awaken some seeds of infinitude inside of you, seeds that may lay dormant, seeds that you might not know about, seeds of art, painting, writing, poetry, foraging, gardening. It's endless. Quantum physics, who knows? I just know there's seeds of infinitude in your midlife heart and soul. This is a part 2. And maybe there'll be a part 3. But this is a part 2 of my podcast yesterday, and you don't need to listen to yesterday, although it would be helpful. And today I'm continuing with the artist Hokusai. And if you listen to the previous podcast, there's a correction on the pronunciation. It's a Japanese word, his name, the artist, and it's in English, it's pronounced Hokusai. And he was became famous artist, drawings, paintings that ultimately inspired Van Gogh, which I talked about. But today I'm going to dive right into the poem that's by Roger Keyes, who wrote this poem as he studied this incredible artist. For more context, you can listen to the previous podcast. For now, let's jump in. Hokusai says, look carefully. He says, pay attention, notice. This idea of slowing down in midlife, being more aware, not just living hypnotic rhythm going on. He says, keep looking, stay curious. He says, there is no end to seeing. How often do we move fast for efficiency and we stop looking deeper? We stop the curiosity. So here's an invitation to stay curious. And he says, there is no end to seeing. He says, look forward to getting older. He says, keep changing. You just get more who you really are. And if you're watching the video, you can see the sun setting behind me, and I'm just going to lift up the camera just for a moment so you can see the Great Parade Meadow in Valley Forge. And I want to draw context here to let you know that this area served in the Revolutionary War, where George Washington's men were here. They dug trenches, they cut lumber down, they really took advantage of the grounds and took it away from its natural state. They were here from the winter of 1777, they left in 1778. But after that, it fell to industry. Miners came in, they mined limestone, dolostone, they pillaged the area, they ripped it dry of its nutrients. They weren't intentional, they weren't good stewards. As a matter of fact, they brought in asbestos, although it wasn't mined here. Asbestos was brought here, and some of it was wasted here. It was set to waste, just ruining the grounds. And there's photos of it. But today, as you look at this, it's pristine. It's become more of what it really is. Despite what man had tried to do to it, it's in this beautiful, pristine state, brought back, evolved. And nature always wins, but through the intention of some great people, they helped that process along. It gives me the opportunity to sit here today. And so the metaphor here is that this meadow has changed over time. It was taken advantage of, but now it's more of what it really is. And to continue on with the poem, he says, get stuck, accept it. Repeat yourself as long as it is interesting. That's an interesting line here. Why get stuck? I think, again, it's opening up to life. And when you hear that line, get stuck, it's not something that you want to be, but if you find yourself stuck, you give yourself the permission to be there, because it's part of life. Being stuck is a part of life. Accept it. And then he says, repeat yourself as long as it is interesting. If it's not interesting to anyone else, that's okay. If it's interesting to you, keep repeating it. Maybe you need to change audiences. He says, keep doing what you love. Part of the reason why I'm out here in Valley Forge in my bare feet, I love it. I love bringing this to you. Keep doing what you love. He says, keep praying. If you're a praying person, maybe you can pray some more. Maybe you can pray differently. Maybe you can pray deeper. If you're not a praying person, can you offer up some kind of reverent gratitude declaration? Perhaps that's the way for you to pray. He says every one of us is a child. Some of you are thinking about some of your interactions. You're saying, that's the truth. That's the truth. But we all have this childlike nature, given the right environment or the right people or the right set of circumstances. But then he goes on to say, every one of us is ancient. And that's an interesting line. Every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Perhaps the ancient part is we're just tapped into the fabric of the universe, the universal fabric where all things exist. Every one of us has a body. If you're listening to this, you have some physicality, some body. He says, every one of us is frightened. And if you're not frightened in this moment, perhaps you have felt that. And if you are, you can relate. We can go through moments of fear. It's a very resonant message. We all experience that fear. He says every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. Pause and breathe here at this beautiful surroundings. I'm just going to take a moment to take in that sunset as it's happening. I wanted to time this today for that sunset for you. He says everything is alive. You can hear it here on this audio, see it on the video. Water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside us. When I look at the tree and the presence of this tree as it moves with the wind, I become more present. And some of you have had these interactions, and if you haven't, consider it an experiment. Experiment with this. See if you can feel the world inside you. See if you can think about a place that you've been that inspired you and feel that place. He says it doesn't matter if you draw or write books. It doesn't matter if you saw wood or catch fish. doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda, and I'll say, it doesn't matter if you stare at the wind blowing through the autumn leaves that have gone from a green to a bright, brilliant yellow, blowing in the wind, awaiting for their descent, their final call home. And as I repeat these lines, a leaf fell to the ground, fulfilling its destiny. I'm playing around with the camera here. I love to see the backdrop there. You can see it, the sky. You can see the horizon. It makes me think of the poem, What the Horizon Has to Teach. That's up on my blog, austinjhaynes.com, poetic blog. You'll see what the horizon has to teach. Let's continue with this beautiful poem by Roger Keyes about Hokusai, the Japanese artist that lived in the late 18th century into the early 19th century. So it doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda or the shade of the trees and grasses in your garden. It doesn't matter. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. Satisfaction and strength is life living through you. He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Love, feel, let life take you by the hand. Let life live through you. Think of this metaphor of allowing life to move through you. That anything that rises, that happens, either seems to be externally or inside of you, what if you could let it live through you and avoid allowing it to be stuck, energy, stuck, trapped. Recognize it, yes. Right? And he says earlier, get stuck. He says it in here. Earlier on, he says, and I've referenced it before, he says, get stuck, accept it. And there, it's a beautiful way to look at life as a pass. Nothing gets trapped or stuck. And even past things that seem stuck, as you evolve and open up to this moment and accept your life and who you are and connect deeper, at some level you're beginning to loosen up these things that are stuck in you. Your body begins to heal, your nervous system relaxes, you breathe a little deeper, you allow your belly to expand so your lungs can fill up. You breathe through your nose naturally and let it out through your mouth naturally. Your facial expression softens. You don't need to be told. All of a sudden you dial in, you resonate, you feel. And then I'm just going to share his words, and we'll keep this to a two-part thing, and you're free to comment if you want to ask me a question, if you want to talk deeper about this. You can connect with me. Go to austinjhaynes.com, and there's links there for you. There's resources there for you. And feel free to share this podcast with somebody. This midlife season, this season of change is a beautiful opportunity to keep at it. And that poem I just shared, Hokusai Says, is again by Roger Keyes, who studied that culture. And now I'm going to go back and revisit the words that were said by Hokusai himself that I extracted. So the context of the poem that was a deep study by Roger Keyes, so he probably extracted or read another work to come up with that creation. But now what I'm going to share with you is the actual words of Hokusai. And I'm going to add my own reflection on it so you can grab insight to walk away open and changed. So from the age of 6, he says, I had a passion for copying the thing from the form of things. So now many of us may not have that recognition at an early age of this deep-seated thing that we're supposed to do. So he had that blessing, that opportunity. But there's solace, there's hope, there's light for all of us. Because let me keep going. I had a passion for copying the form of things since the age of 50. So from the age of 6, I had a passion for copying the form of things, and since the age of 50, let me correct myself, and since the age of 50, I have published many drawings. So now he's talking about his journey. Then he says, yet of all I drew by my 70th year, there is nothing worth taking into account. Now, this is really an interesting perspective. He's basically going, wow, up until 70, there was nothing that I thought was even worthy. Now, he goes on to say, at 73 years now, I partly understand the structure of animals, birds, and insects and fishes, and the life of grasses and plants. And so at 86, I shall progress further. At 90, I shall even further penetrate the secret meaning. And by 100, I shall perhaps have truly reached the level of the marvelous and divine. When I am 110, each dot, each line will possess a life of its own. And I think what I want to share with you is this humility intertwined with purpose and passion to understand deeper. And through this deepening, there's this deepening of understanding. There's a deepening of intention. So as I deepen my passion and my purpose to understand this form of things, the things, grass, insects, rock, things that people walk by and don't even bat an eye at, he's looking deeper at. He's humble. He's realizing that my work, I'm not even scratching the surface. Now, by today's standard, his work is probably, and I haven't done the research to know what the value of it is, but I'm sure all of it has tremendous value. But that humility and that ability to stay at it, and then to get to 110 and say, by that time, each dot, each line will possess a life of its own. Incredible presence, incredible intention through this artist, beautiful, beautiful man and his words. I'm drawing a lot from today. The sun has set, and if you are on the audio, I'm going to end it right here and just invite you to connect with me at austinjhaynes.com to tap into those resources. Make sure you follow the YouTube podcast or the Spotify or Apple, whatever works best for you, or both. And for those of you that are on the video, I'm going to take a moment to stand up here in my bare feet. I got my red Flashpoint jersey on today, and we're going to just pan around this beautiful meadow to grab the metaphor as we wrap it up. And we think about Hokusai, and we think about this midlife perspective of being passionate and staying curious and getting back to the basic things that he mentioned, Roger Keyes mentioned in the poem. And we think about Hokusai's words from 6 years old to 110. And the one thing I do want to add here as a bonus, you may say, well, I didn't figure out what I was supposed to do at 6 years old. Well, midlife, this recognition, this podcast is the invitation. So this is the invitation. And maybe, like me, there was a seed of infinitude or seeds of infinitude inside of you, and all you need to do now is begin to pause and breathe and to listen deeper, just like it references in the poem, to stay curious about what's in yourself, and to listen deeper, to perceive deeper. And maybe there was something in your youth that you did that you forgot about. the manifestation of everything that I'm doing, not everything, much of it was prevalent in my youth, but my awareness was weak, my conscious presence was weak, and I had some things that I needed to accept about myself. Feel free to drop a comment, send me a message. I'm grateful that you joined me today, and I would stay here for another hour if I could, but I am just going to ask you to pause and breathe as we take in this beautiful tree here and this backdrop one more time. Just a moment to pause and listen. Thanks for being here today, everybody. My name's Austin James Haynes, from Fortune 500 to poet, from Fortune 500 company to poet. And it's an honor and a privilege to serve you in this way. And there's going to be a lot more as I plan for some sort of world tour. So I may be in your neck of the woods before you know it. Have a great day. God bless, and I'll see you for the next episode.